Welcome to Innovators at the Intersection. I'm Jordan Weiss, and I'm thrilled to share stories of visionaries and creatives at the crossroads of culture and STEAM. Our monthly podcast and bi-monthly publication highlight change makers that are shaping a better tomorrow. So, Hikaru, we're so happy to have you with us today. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, about growing up, and about what you're involved in, and then we can dive into some deeper questions. We'd love to learn about you.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Hikaru Wakeel Hayakawa. I am the executive director of Climate Cardinals, and I'm a Guyanese and Japanese American climate activist. And so I grew up here in the New York metro area, actually like 20 minutes from where we're filming.
Okay.
And yeah, basically I grew up in an intergenerational household of activists. And so I grew up with a long legacy of like my great-grandparents, my grandparents, and my parents being involved in civic engagement. And so I grew up knowing about, the power that people have in making a difference. And so basically when I was 14, there were a lot of different social issues going on in my community. So there was a lawsuit with my school district focused on racial justice. There's a lot of organizing around that. There's also Hurricane Sandy. And at this time, I had gotten involved in local organizing. And so my journey of advocacy started at age 14.
I was going to say, sounds like you were young.
Yeah, I was very young. But
That's
I think
pretty bold, and to be able to do that. You must have had a spark inside for you to want to do that.
Yeah, I think, I loved reading and writing, and I think I grew up like with a very unique background. So like I'm half Japanese. My mom is Guyanese of Afro-Caribbean and Indian descent, and then she grew up in Washington Heights in New York.
Oh, okay.
And so I think growing up, I didn't always feel like represented by institutions, organizations, which of course a lot of people feel. But for me, I was able to express not feeling represented through reading and writing. And then I realized at a young age that advocacy essentially is like a form of science fiction and fantasy, because in order to realize a better world, you have to imagine it first. And that's what really excited me about it at that young age, because I'd grown up, maybe not so connected to external organizations and just spending a lot of time reading and writing. And then advocacy became a way for me to express like everything that I felt and make a better world out of it.
So like be the change, right? Basically.
Yeah, to do my best to be the change. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, getting into your background, which is really interesting, how has your Caribbean and Japanese American background shaped your approach to giving people a voice in climate issues? Curious to know how your background has affected that.
Yeah, having a unique background, I was just very aware of how, that there are a lot of people like see leaders and organizations and they don't feel represented and they don't always feel a strong sense of community. And I think that's increasingly becoming true, right, with a growing loneliness crisis in the world.
Post-COVID.
Yeah, especially post-COVID. Yes. Yeah. And so because of that, I've at a young age, I wanted to be able to work in a job in which I could empower people and uplift marginalized voices and make sure that they were centered. And so Climate Cardinals was very much a part of it. So I joined the founding team at age 18.
I was just going to ask you how old we're here. You and I are here. Okay.
Yeah. So I was 18 at the time. I was about to turn 19. And basically, we all came together because we were children of immigrants and we saw in our own families how the climate movement was leaving people behind. Mm-hmm. So basically, 80% of the world doesn't speak English at all. That's 6.5 billion people.
80%.
Yeah, 80%.
And meanwhile, being an American English, you think, a lot of people speak English out there.
Yeah.
But that's the reality. It's not a lot of people.
Yeah, the vast majority of the world doesn't speak English at all. And a large proportion of the people who do speak English are not native speakers, right?
Hmm.
And so, but despite that, like 98% of climate information, up to 98% of climate information is only available in English. And so there are a lot of like frontline communities that have never heard the words climate change before. And then there's a study from UNESCO that showed that 70% of young people either don't know what climate change is or they can't explain its basics.
Globally,
Globally,
outside.
yes.
So, I mean, and we need a global movement, obviously, to really uh, deal with climate change. I mean, it can't just be our country. You need people from all over the world. So that's makes a lot of sense as to why you'd have such an interest in trying to broaden the message and get it out there to a broader population.
Yeah, no,
Critical.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's so critical, right? Because everyone's being impacted. And of the top 10 countries that are disproportionately affected by climate change, I believe 9 of them are majority non English speaking.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Um, so, kind of building off of that, when did you realize most people didn't have access to climate info, and what surprised you as the Climate Cardinals organization grew?
Yeah. So it was something that I like had in the back of my mind. Like it was like in my own family and in my community that a lot of people didn't have access to information. But basically, like my friend Sophia, she brought a lot of us together around this issue. And then, as she shared and others shared about, the fact that most information isn't available in English, I realized like I could see that in my own family and communities too.
Hmm.
And so that was really the beginning of Climate Cardinals was us translating climate information for family, for our communities, for like local organizations. And as Climate Cardinals grew, it was just incredible to see like how many people also saw how big of an issue this is, right? Because basically one of our team members made a TikTok, it went viral,
Hmm.
and then within the first year of our organization, we were just high school students with $500.
Right, right.
There were 8,000 signups from 60 countries,
Wow.
and then UN agencies started reaching out to us. Then we also won TED, like the TED, like the all the videos on ideas. Like we won their global ideas contest.
Really?
And
What
so
year do you remember the year on that?
um,
And if you don't,
it
that's
was
totally
it was the
cool.
year of the UN climate change conference in Glasgow. So I can't
All
remember
right, don't
exactly
worry
what
about it.
year it
But
was.
that's a good frame of reference, what you just mentioned. So that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and so like our mission just resonated with so many people. And I started just like I was speaking to activists from all around the world, and
Hmm.
like there's one story that I remember, which is like I was speaking to a friend of mine from Somalia, and then she was saying like up into her 20s, like she was being affected by climate change, but she didn't know what it was, and then
Huh.
she was just on Google and she was like searching, and then it came up like on Google like in her 20s, and then she was like, oh, like yeah, this is affecting me, but she never received formal education about it or anything and didn't have access to a lot of information about climate change.
You know, it's interesting. A couple of things. Do you think that, I mean, that's more common than not, where people globally outside of kind of maybe within the United States, UK, westernized, countries, people are like, it's extreme, this rain is torrential and I've never seen anything like this. It must be scary not
Yeah.
even being able to connect the dots, right? Because I mean, there is science behind this, so you
Yeah.
start to understand it. So that must be pretty intense for a lot of people that don't even know what they're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people know and they see the changes in their communities, but they're not able to connect it to broader conversations globally about what's going on in the world, right?
Hmm.
And so it's a huge issue, right? Because like a lot of people don't have access to information on how to prepare for disasters, and there's so much information coming from like research centers that just isn't getting directly to communities.
Hmm.
Like a lot of communities don't receive emergency alerts, and sometimes the emergency alerts are mistranslated, so people really don't know what to do, or they're not aware of when disasters are about to happen. There's also the issue of like grant applications, for
Right.
example. So like ideally we want more resources getting to these communities, but for example, like this is not just in the climate space, but broadly, like 80% of philanthropy that goes to Africa goes to English speaking countries in Africa.
Yeah.
And so like this is just a huge barrier in general that is influencing like, okay, like whose perspective is heard, who gets resources, how prepared are people for disasters. And as climate change increases, like there's so many communities that are going to be affected, and in order for them to be resilient, like we need to make sure that they're receiving the information, the resources they need to prepare.
Do you do a lot of traveling globally? Like as the executive director, do you go to different countries and boots on the ground, kind of engage with people, with common folks, just to kind of talk to them about climate change, about what's going on? And I mean, yeah, I would think yes.
Yeah. So I do spend time traveling for different reasons, but most of our work is done directly by our global network. So, we started as a small group of teenagers translating climate information, primarily in the US, and now we're about 19,000 people in 145 countries. Most of them are volunteer translators, and we also have chapters, and there are 85 chapters, primarily in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, that are leading grassroots climate education initiatives. And then we also re-grant out to them so that they can lead local projects that directly like strengthen their communities. But for me personally, like I will spend time because we're very much focused on like, how can we have the biggest change possible? And I know that like we're only one organization. And so we spend a lot of time trying to influence governments, like people who are giving out money to communities and tech companies to make sure that that new innovations are getting out to communities, and that they understand that like they're very small changes they can make that will save people's lives and improve people's lives. And in addition to that, like I also spend time like going out and learning from our communities, like people in our network, so that we can do our mission even better. And so most recently, I was at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. And so at the beginning of the World Economic Forum, we put out our first policy paper, and our policy paper was on our mission. And then we, like this was our first time doing it, but we have such an incredible team. And I always say that, young people don't know their limits. And so basically, we put it out on social media, went viral. And then there was uptake among policymakers, like research agencies. And then it also got covered by some of the largest publications in the environmental sector. And then while we were at the World Economic Forum, I spent time meeting with development agencies, with tech companies to tell them about our mission and to make sure that they're actively thinking about it, like when they're planning their programming, like throughout the year.
Wow. It's interesting. So how old are you now?
I'm 24.
24. And you started getting involved in this organization when it was
18.
18.
Yeah.
Okay. But you had, the passion going back to when you were like 14, right?
Yeah.
And probably going back even before that because of the family that you grew up with, right? So let me ask you this. This is your career, right? You're obviously very passionate about it. If you had to give any advice to any of the 14-year-olds out there, as far as, you don't necessarily know what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life at that age, but do you have any, 14 or even 18-year-olds, kind of within that demographic, any ideas as far as pursuing careers? And I mean, based on what you're doing something you love, you're very passionate about it. So what would you say to the younger people out there that are, I guess, looking to have an impact in some field that's going to be positive? What would you tell them?
Yeah, so Rainn Wilson, the actor from The Office, he's also a climate activist.
And he's a drummer? No, he was a drummer in the movie. Whatever.
Really? Yeah, I didn't know that.
I think so. The rock star or something? Anyway, that's not don't get me going on movies, and Frank will tell you. Anyway, go ahead.
No, well, Rainn Wilson, so the actor from The Office and the climate activist, said that one of the biggest crises of our time is that young people are losing hope in their like ability to make a difference in the world. And
right.
And that's what I'm also seeing, but I'm also seeing the opposite of that, like through our organization, like bringing like thousands of young people around the world into the movement, people who might have not related to it before, but they feel like very seen by our focus on language accessibility, and on bringing, communities that haven't been traditionally involved into this space. And so the unfortunate reality is that there are not that many people who are involved in making social change.
Right.
And so you look at other movements, the civil rights movement,
Right.
like decolonization, like most of the people involved all knew each other. But the thing is that like there is a lot that you can do when you step up, when you speak out, when you build community. And so I think for young people, like realizing that they have a much stronger ability to make a difference. And I feel like when I was younger, people would always say this to me, and I was like, what does that even mean?
Right.
But I think just like getting involved in your community, like it's a good way to make friends. It's
That's
also
right.
a
The
good
social
way to,
component is important too. Just speaking or connecting that to the post pandemic world too, right?
yeah.
Probably a good way for people to connect and engage.
Yeah, and then like just like the thing is like you usually aren't good at something that you don't enjoy doing.
Right.
And so I think like just finding what you enjoy, and I think it's even better if it's at a younger age, right? Because you have a longer time to like get better at it, and to be able to like develop your skills, and so that when you're older, like hopefully like you know what you want, and then you can do what you want. And I'm so happy that I was able to find this, and like be able to work on this full time, because that
Yeah.
definitely, like, I mean, up until my last year of university, I thought I would go to grad school directly. And then instead, we received a major grant from Google, who is one of our partners. And I was able to start working on this full time, and then just realize like this, like I love learning, like I love like basically like doing my best to improve and change the world. And then I also love being part of a great community. And so I've just loved my job so much, and I'm just so happy that I was able to find it early.
Yeah. I mean, we hear the term change maker a lot. I mean, you're somebody that's out there on the front line, extremely passionate about what you do, have been for a long time. So you must, every morning you wake up, it must feel good to know that you're fighting the good fight and you're having such, a positive impact on society and on our environment. And I mean, we really do need more people like you out there doing work like this, but it must feel great, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so rewarding. There's a lot of research on it actually, that like people who are civically engaged and like who volunteer, like who are involved in like social organizations, like tend to be happier, right? Because you have a community, you have a purpose, and so I'm lucky that I get to do it full time.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think it's important that people find careers that they're really passionate about. So this is an interesting question. Curious to get your thoughts on this. Why is two-way communication between local communities and global audiences so important? Curious to know the connection there.
Definitely. I mean, well, at a global level, or just in general, like the whole purpose of the nonprofit sector, but also like people who are working in public services, right, is to serve people and to improve their lives. And so how can we do that if we don't know what's happening on the ground, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like that's why the language barrier is so important, right? Because there are a lot of people who are not consulted, like who are not involved in decision-making processes at all. And like and also like there's not a lot of awareness all the time about what's going on in their day-to-day lives, because
Right.
people aren't speaking to them. And so there's this organization called Translate, which is a group of scientists, I believe based in Canada.
Okay.
And like they did research on the most recent, there's like a UN body that focuses on biodiversity, and then they did research on how different communities value or appreciate like ecosystems. And then basically they found that I believe it was 98 or it was 95 or 98% of the research that the report had cited was only from English language sources. And then again, like only 1 or 2 billion people speak English.
Right.
And so that's the vast majority of the world that isn't being included in decision making processes. And then also, like, when I go to conferences, like, I see this all the time. Like, I'm there with activists like who don't speak English, and they're not able to like listen into what people are saying, and it's difficult for them to respond. Like, even if you don't speak English as your native language, right, you feel nervous,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Like, you don't feel able to express yourself
Hmm.
completely. And so when we think about like what does making a better world look like, it means that we need a lot more perspectives, because like if we just don't know what's going on in the world, like how can we make a better world for everyone?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what you're doing also, it's like somebody like myself, I just assume, that the majority of the world, they know about climate change. They know what's going on, and the fact is that you're educating people that have no idea. Again, not I know we talked about it earlier, but to me, it's just you realize how im- truly important this organization is, because if people don't understand what's going on, how are they going to be able to get involved to do work to mitigate, what we're seeing out there with climate change? And so it's truly, uh, I mean, aside from just being important, it's like it's absolutely critical that we have an organization like Climate Cardinals, right?
Yeah, well, I believe so.
No,
Maybe I'm
but I'm just
biased,
saying,
but yes, yeah,
but
no,
if we just
definitely,
look at
yeah,
if we look at the facts, what we're
yeah,
talking about here, just the data. I
yes,
mean,
yeah,
we're talking about 80%, right, of the world um, does not speak English,
yeah,
and most of the information on climate change is in English.
yes, yeah,
So
exactly.
how are they going to know what's going on? So you're doing something that is, I mean, it is, yes, your passion, that's it's always important, but what you're doing is so meaningful and so powerful and critical. Like I used that word before, but it is critical.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, and I think we're reaching. I mean, we're seeing a lot of progress
Mm-hmm.
in the climate movement. Like, we're reaching like huge tipping points. Like, for example, like last year, like there was more newly installed renewable energy than fossil fuels. There are now more jobs in renewable energy than in the fossil fuel industry. But we're still dealing with the impacts of climate change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh yeah.
global average temperatures are still increasing. Like, scientists are looking at overshoot, and hopefully we can move things quickly enough. But basically, within any pathway right now, like, we need to directly invest in communities, and
Right.
so that's why this language barrier is so important. I mean, sometimes people say like, okay, yeah, like most of the emissions are coming
Right.
from like North America and from Europe, and or a large proportion of emissions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we need to make sure that every community can protect themselves and can take
Right.
action, that they're informed. And then also, if a community is resilient to climate change, then they're also resilient to a lot of other issues too.
Let me ask you this, and just to like on the other side, where people are like, climate change initially was referred to for as global warming, and sometimes it's referenced as that, but not as much. So, like, I'm not saying this is totally attributed to climate change, but this deep, deep freeze that we're in right now, right? When people are like, what do you mean global warming? It's so cold. It's see, it's cold out. See, I mean, the there's also a naivete out there. I don't even know if I want to say it's denial, because what you're doing is you're presenting data and facts, or you're working off the data to help educate people out there that don't, speak English, and to learn about climate change. But even those that are that are English, that are, that still are kind of like, see, what do you, how do you speak to people that I don't feel like it's necessarily a denial. I think it's a lack of a knowledge and education, truly understanding scientifically what's happening. Correct? I mean,
Yeah.
or at least part of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think, well, most people are trying to live their day to day lives, right? And
Yeah.
climate science can be very difficult to understand. Like, it's not the easiest thing to understand the first time you hear about it, right? And so, I there's this incredible book called How Climate Change Comes to Matter by an Inuit journalist, and her name is Candace Callison. And basically her entire argument is that like people are always asking, okay, like why don't people believe in climate change? But then her point is that like the question we should actually be asking is like, why do people care about climate change? Like why does it matter to them? And then she's looking at different
So you're not,
communities.
when you're doing that, you're not creating a kind of a divisiveness, correct?
Yeah.
That's very smart.
Yeah, but also like how do you connect this to people's lives, right? Because for example, like she looks at indigenous communities and like why they care about climate change and evangelists like environmental groups.
Right.
And then in the financial sector, like they're talking about like climate risk, like they're like different values and different ways of seeing the world. And so like how can we bring climate change to people and understand it in ways that like actually like that connect it to their lives, and also like how do we provide information in a way that improves their lives too, right? Because like also like if you think about it purely in terms of like impacts, like I mean, I guess not everyone needs to know about climate change in order for people.
But everybody should.
Everyone
Because
should.
everybody can make a difference if, to your point, you mention like, listen, this is how you are probably impacted. You don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Right. And then people are like, really? Maybe I should do something about that because that's not, that's not cool. That's, you know what I mean? You know what I'm
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, like, everyone should, like, in order to have, like, systems change, like, everyone needs to be involved and be able to, like, see, like, how, like, what's in front of them and, like, how they can change it. Because, like, the whole, like, the fossil fuel industry, like, all the other issues that underpin, like, the climate crisis are systemic. Like, it's about, like, human relationships with the environment. It's about, like, empathy for other people too, right? Like, can you relate to people like who, you don't know, who don't live in your community?
that are more vulnerable too, right? When you think about a lot of the parts of the world that are affected by climate change, I mean, yes, the United States is, but more vulnerable populations, right? Isn't that also really important to address and help?
No, definitely. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's so important to, yeah, to bring everyone into the movement as much as possible. But also to like ensure that people are getting information that's relevant to them. So like, for example, if you're a farmer, like how is climate change impacting like yield and like your crops? Like if you're living on the coast, in Manhattan or in Florida, or anywhere else in the world, like how is this going to affect you, like, and your insurance? Because for example, like a lot of insurance companies don't want to insure homes on coasts anymore because they're worried about coastal flooding.
Okay.
And so climate change impacts everyone. But how can you provide the information that's most relevant to people, but also like climate change is very difficult to understand sometimes. So like how can you bring it to people? And then sometimes like there's some really interesting organizations working on this. And for some of them, like they know that because climate change has become so politicized, like in some communities they don't talk about climate change. Like they are climate organizations, but they're like, okay, this is about disaster preparedness.
Right.
Or this is about like how do you improve your yield. And so how can you get people to care about this issue? Like even when like, because climate change has become such a politicized term, like how can you still bring them into this space and realize that it's relevant to them?
Right. No, that's true. And I mean, it's just like all of this stuff is really so important, the work that you're doing. Getting into what's most, what's most exciting for you and Climate Cardinals right now? I know there's a lot of exciting things going on based on what you're doing, but if you had to pick one right now at this moment, what would it be?
Supporting young people. I mean,
Okay.
it's so amazing. Like every day, it's like wake up and then like I see like like yesterday I woke up and then there was like a report for one of our chapters in the Ivory Coast that was leading like grassroots climate education sessions. Like the other day, like one of our chapter leads in Uganda, like they went out to a rural community and they led like local climate education sessions at schools, and they gave out like trees so that so that people could like go and like take like what they were learning and actually
Mm.
translate into action. And so I feel so much hope in a time in which like a lot of people aren't feeling it, just because I see that people are actually doing things. And so I'm just so excited to continue to support young people. And I'm so excited that, we are this global community and that all these people know each other. They'll know each other for the rest of their lives, and that we'll all be able to work on this together
Hmm.
for as long as long as we're all together on this planet. And so and I'd love to get more people involved.
Yeah.
And so definitely like for those who are listening and interested, like you can sign up to volunteer at climatecardinals.org, and you can also donate and support our chapters and our other young people on our website.
So this is actually really interesting, and this is kind of a testament to the growth of Climate Cardinals, of your impact working there. You've gone from viral posts to broader platforms like we just talked about. Maybe a month ago, you were in Kelly Clarkson. You were just Davos. I mean, how has that changed your role, and how do you stay focused? Because it seems like, you're starting to get a broader platform, which is great. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's so well. We are a mission like focused organization, and for us the question always goes back to like how can we and like go back to our vision in which like every community is resilient to climate change, like that they're prepared, that they have like the social networks they need
Hmm.
to get everything they need to continue and thrive. And so whenever we're going to a space or whenever we're thinking about, okay, like, are we going to speak to this journalist? Like, are we going to try and push out the word about this project? Like, it always comes back to that for us. And so, I mean, I think it is very easy to get lost in
Sure.
all of it.
Yeah.
But also like ultimately like also people want to support the work and provide a platform like if they believe that you are actually doing the work.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're aiming to do, and that's what drives us every day.
That's good. And yeah, you have to stay focused. You got to, need to keep your eye on the ball, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
So, Hikaru, thanks so much for being with us today and sharing your insights at Climate Cardinals, and this is going to help a lot of people. So definitely tune in and listen and watch. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for platforming so many incredible people and causes.
Oh, thanks. That means so much. And yeah, we're going to keep doing our part to tell these stories.